Good morning. This is a continuation from yesterday. Should have a microphone here? Whatever. It's a continuation from yesterday. Yesterday we read something fascinating. The pasuk says, "Karati v'tamani natati yadi ve'en makshiv." We're on page 52. I've called and you refuse. I've stretched forth my hand and no one listened. This is the idea that God always stretches out His hand to us, and God is always trying to grab us to get us closer to Him. And then the pasuk continues, "V'tifra'u kol atzotai v'tochachti lo avitem." You ignored all my advice, and my rebuke you did not want. The pasuk isn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu yelling at us, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu hurting. He's saying that I tried to reach out to you, I gave you guidance in the world, I gave you signs in the world, and I gave you Torah, but you didn't take it and hear it yourself. Now, if you look at the way the pasuk is talking about, it's not a cry of anger per se, it's a cry of love of rejection. That God feels like that you rejected him. You know, like a parent who keeps trying to be mechanech the child in the right direction, but the child insists, I know what I'm doing, I'm better, I know better than you, mom. The classic, mom, stop bothering me, I know better. And then the mom always knows better, and then you start crying to the mom or to the dad when you screwed up, right? That's always happens. And that's what Shlomo really is describing here, because again, you're not getting close to God because you feel comfortable, but when you need God, you start coming close to Him. Why not come close to God always? Why do you always have to be? Why does it always have to be when you need Him? It could be always. Now, when we stop listening to God's advice throughout our lives, when we tune out His voice, we're not breaking rules, but we're breaking a relationship with something holier. And if you continue on the words, the tapru ko atzotai, you undid my advice. The word v'tarpu comes from the word para, which means to undo and to unravel. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying is that I wove together advice in this world to protect you, to bring you beracha, but you unraveled that advice that you got throughout the world. Every mitzvah, every halacha, every piece of Torah wisdom is all itzah within itself. It's all this advice. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's personal advice on how to live a life, how to live a best life, of our best life, right? We think, I said this the other day. One of my students who's like completely secular told me, he's like, Rabbi, if the whole world just followed the words of the Torah, I'm not talking about religiously, I'm talking about the concepts and the ideas, the world would be a much better place. And I want to see why. I asked him why. He goes, because there's so much good that comes out. And we're learning it this morning in Pirkei Avot. When you learn Torah, not for the concept of knowledge, but for the idea of wisdom from the knowledge, to take that knowledge and make wisdom out of that, that's the ultimate highest thing, because you end up improving your own life and the lives of people around you. Now, and when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us something, it's meant there for a reason. It's like a doctor who gives you the perfect prescription, right? The patient says, I'm good, but the doctor knows better than the doctor gave it to you. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us an etzah, an advice, He's not trying to control us, He's trying to heal us through that etzah, through that advice. And when we ignore it, we're not just rebelling against Him, we're hurting actually ourselves, because we're preventing our growth from there. Now, think about the word etzah. The word etzah is advice. Advice is something that comes from someone who cares, right? Because that's the idea. If someone cares about you, that's ultimately advice. If someone doesn't care about you, he's just trying to better himself, so it's not really advice. And that's why the Chachamim say, someone has to be really real with himself when he's giving advice to someone, not for his own personal gain. Right? You have this in business all the time. A guy will give advice to his friend, but really, why is he giving me advice? Because he wants to be better his competition. Right? So you'll tell him, you should do X, Y, and Z, so you can mess himself up, and then you'll be up there. But real advice is someone who actually cares. A rabbi who cares about you, a parent, a teacher, that's real advice. A stranger gives you commands. A parent gives this advice. A father gives this advice. A rabbi gives this advice. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, I'm giving you this advice also. But sometimes, because the Torah's advice doesn't really match with what we want from our lives, we end up turning away. Right? We say later, or we say I know, or we say I'm fine, I know how to do better. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying here, that's exactly what breaks my heart. Not the mistake that you did, but the fact that you don't want to hear my advice.
God says that?
What? God is saying that. Meaning from this pasuk, He's saying, the pasuk literally says, right? I gave you, you rejected all my counsel, and you right? I give it to you every single day. Every single thing we have in our life is that advice. The signs that we have in life. That's the idea. And then he continues, you did not want my rebuke. This is really the realest part of the pasuk. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, I try to give you feedback in your life. I send you signs, I send you people around you, but you didn't want it. And that's the truth, that none of us like being corrected, right? Because I think this is also an ego aspect. But I spoke with, you guys know who Simon Nissim is?
Yeah.
So Simon Nissim, me and him are very close, and we were discussing this concept of the human mind and stuff. I think 99% of problems today with the human have to do with self-esteem. And if you break it down, it really makes sense. You're embarrassed because you feel like you're not as good as what's it called, all these things have to do with self-esteem. But that's the same thing with being corrected. Why don't you want to be corrected? Because you think you're better, and you're nervous to be corrected. To the point that the Gemara brings us down Bava Metzia. Anybody who lowers himself on account of Torah in this world, which means learning from other people who are smaller than him, becomes greater in the next world. Why? Because you're showing God it's not about greatness, it's about bettering myself. We have this in Pirkei Avot, right? So that's the idea. Hashem is saying, I want to give you these things. And now, our rabbis tell us that love without rebuke isn't really real love, if you think about it. Right? As a parent, in order to discipline your child, you have to rebuke them sometimes. Same thing with God. Sometimes we need rebuke to better ourselves, to get ourselves back on the right path. And because real love wants you to grow. Right? Love of a parent, he always wants you to better yourself. A teacher always wants to better yourself. That's why they give you tests. Right? Tests is, again, what's a test in school? To make sure you get, you understand your knowledge. What's a test in life? To overcome that and become greater. All tests in life are for you to become great. And when we were in school, we looked at it as a test is just annoying. I hated tests, by the way. I literally, the past 3 years, I was taking a test every single week for smicha. Like literally, my program was you can't move on if you don't pass your previous, it's a whole, so I dreaded tests, but then when you think about it, it's like, that's what makes you a better person, and that's the tests in life also. Your tests in life are here to make you better. We look at it as a negative, but like we said the other day, without going down, there's no going up. The fact that you have the ability to go down, but you choose not to go down, that's ultimate greatness. That's going up. Now, the main point is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't always rebuke us with punishment or with stuff like that. A lot of times it's hidden within our own experiences in life. Something happened to you at work, that could be a rebuke. It wakes you up. It doesn't have to be that something. A kapara, yeah, exactly.
Is it legit?
A kapara is legit. What do you mean? That
it's a real thing?
Of course, yeah. God does something to you, and it could have been much worse. He gave you that. It could be your business, but you still have your family. Or it could be, so people always, we tend to always complain to God when something is wrong, but we never thank Him when something is right. Right? We only go to Him when we want something. What about when we just thank Him for what we already have? Right? So something goes wrong in our business. I'm learning with a guy now, you keep complaining that his business is going bad. I'm like, did you ever pray when your business is going good? He's like, you're right. So I'm like, so maybe God wants you to wake you up so you could pray now to have a better life. But when you had the good, why don't you appreciate the good? It happens a lot in our lives. We have things in our life that we only appreciate it once we lost them. So why not take advantage of what you have now and make the most out of it, instead of you later on, getting upset. Now, an idea of this is also like, when you keep bumping into the same person in the street, that's really God telling you something. Maybe you should learn something from that person. When God is when someone criticizes you, and we want to get defensive, right? That happens all the time. Maybe there's something true inside the words that He's trying to tell us to improve ourselves, right? When every little discomfort in our lives really carries HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling us, understand, grow from this idea. Like we have to, as Jews, we have to be big. I said this yesterday. We always have to be big. Now, an idea of this is, look how David HaMelech really responded to Natan HaNavi when he rebuked him over Bathsheba. He didn't argue. He didn't justify. He didn't say anything. He just said, "Chatati la Hashem," I sinned to God. That's the ultimate humility. That the willingness to listen to someone when someone rebukes you. That's what made David HaMelech great. That someone wise once said, "Sit down and be humble." Right? You just have to understand that, you messed up, you move on. right? And the same thing here with God is that He's telling you, I'm giving you all these advice. Take it, become great, And that's why the foundation of our faith is really the words of Shema. Why? Shema means listen. If we can just listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's advice, to His rebuke, to what life is telling us, we can really change everything in our lives. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't demand perfection. He just wants us to care enough to listen to Him. Because the moment we open our heart to hear, His etzah will start flowing again. And you'll start to see His hand, and you'll start to see everything guiding you through your life, and you'll start to feel that relationship again with God. And that's the ultimate idea. The pasuk isn't saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying you failed. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying that I tried to help you succeed, but you didn't want to hear it. And the amazing thing is that He never gives up, because even if we ignored hundreds of times, God is always sending new ways. He's sending new moments. He's sending new people to our lives to help us listen. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for us never runs out, no matter how low we got. And He's not waiting to punish us. He's waiting for us to open our hearts and our ears to listen to Him and become great. Have Shabbat Shalom.